Often when planning cloud migration projects, companies need to think where they're going to go and how they're going to get there. They often have their own data centers hosting applications, hosting their existing systems, and the migration process is the biggest pain point. Once you've done that transition, once you're actually on the cloud, things are a lot smoother running and you can then reduce your costs. But getting there and the actual transition process is often quite painful because there's a period of parallel running that they need to consider how they actually phase their systems across from their existing on-premise environments into the cloud. So it's a lot about networking, a lot about connectivity, how they need to maintain connections to their existing back-end systems as part of the migration process. So it often makes things a lot more complicated, and security is often a big feature because you need to secure links between the cloud environments and your existing data centers. If you're going to still maintain some back-end systems that your migrated systems have to talk to, then there's extra hoops you often have to jump through with regulatory boards, with the security departments, and just keeping everyone happy that's in the compliance department. Compliance is always a big headache. With cloud migration, it's new technology, it's a new thing which often excites people because a lot of people like new and shiny, but then there's some people which don't like change. And it's reskilling those people, getting them up to speed with how to do things in a non-data center fashion, to actually think differently around consumable tools rather than things that are capital costs, so that you can actually leverage the concept of what the cloud is about, which is a self-service, pay-per-use environment, whereas what they might be used to is a more data center environment where you pay upfront, allowing for several years worth of capacity growth, and then having to plan all of that lot out into a data center environment, and cope with maybe not even hitting those limits or maybe over scoping those limits. Whereas in a cloud environment, you pay for what you use. And it's a mindset change more than anything else, as well as a skill set and how to actually use those tools and actually leverage the fact that you don't need to provision yourself a massive server now. You don't need to provision a massive server now if you're only going to use 10% of it and then grow in 2 years' time to use 50% of it and grow in another 2 years' time to use the remaining of it. So it's changing that mindset. It's coming to the realization that actually I can scale when I need to and only pay for what I'm using now rather than having to buy a machine that's going to see me through 5 years worth of growth. So my tips for companies that are looking to migrate to the cloud and adopt cloud practices would be to think about the journey, think about where you want to get to, and then work out how you're going to get there in baby steps. It's never going to work well to do a big bang transition. You're always going to have different parts of your system that need to be able to interact. So think about the journey, think about how you're going to get from where you are today to where you want to be, and think about how you can use that as an opportunity to cut out some of the systems which are too complicated, to break them down into smaller components, which will then make the transition easier. Often with migration, it's not just about lift and shift, but it's an element of recoding, about reworking some of the environments to make them not only work better, but to work more efficiently, to save you money. And the best thing about cloud is the cost management. You can just grow when you need to grow. You can scale when you need to scale. If you've got a workload that peaks and troughs throughout the day, because people only use your system during office hours, for example, then you can scale back down overnight. If you're working in a development environment, then you don't need to pay for your environments at weekends when you haven't got any developers working on them. So it's being able to leverage the benefits of a cloud, that it's self-service, that it's dynamically scaling, and that you only pay for what you use for. And make the most of that for businesses, because it will allow them to control their costs a lot more. It'll give them much better scalability, much more flexibility, and it will allow your development teams to iterate a lot faster. In the old world of having your own hardware, having your own data centers, there is a lot of lead time involved in setting new systems up, in having to provision not only environments to run your production systems, but have the hardware available for your developers and your feature teams to actually do their work. With the cloud, if you've got a new feature team that comes on board to deliver a specific piece of functionality, you just pay for the resources they need while they're doing the development work. When they're no longer needed, if the teams get shuffled around, all of that infrastructure is cloud. You don't pay for it anymore. It's just given back to your cloud provider. And that self-service capability of cloud is so critical to how businesses can move faster and move in a more efficient and more secure fashion. You don't have to provision your own hardware. You don't have to rack up servers in a data center and have weeks and weeks of lead time to even get your feature teams started and actually delivering value. They can be up and running in minutes. And when they finished, it can be all shut down in minutes.